So what I talk about in the introduction is I set the cosmology, I guess is a term you could use, of the world we exist in. If you think of the old medieval cosmology, you've got sort of like the 7 levels of heaven, you've got the earth, and then you've got the levels of hell below that. I'm not looking at it from that perspective, but that's sort of a similar thing. Dante Alighieri in Paradiso, what is it? Divine Comedy, spoke about that. The medievalists had this very clear view of what the world looked like outside of just the natural. Whereas Christians, not necessarily. Christians generally are very influenced by naturalism, by materialism. And so we look at the world very much like moderns. Even if we believe in God, many people don't really bring that into the way they see things. So what I've done in this chapter is I've actually shown that the way the world works, you have God at the top, but then there's God's agents. You've got the archangels, the high angels, the lower order angels. You've got humanity, you've got the devil, and you've got the demons. And I show how there are Christians in history who understood the way this world worked. And one of the best examples, and I think you can't get a better example in the 20th century at least, was J.R. Tolkien, who structured his world in Lord of the Rings based on the biblical worldview. Now, Lord of the Rings is fictional, of course. It's a fantasy story, but he wrote it very specifically for a very specific reason, to give English people, and when I say English people, I mean people from England, to give them a mythology which helped them to place themselves in the world. And his story is really a story of man's battle with sin, man's battle with corruption, man's battle with internal demons, man's battle with external demons. You know, you've got guys like Saruman, who's a fallen angel, and these other guys who are evil forces who are at work in the world. And he presents a very clear worldview where people know their place in the world, or at least the heroes do. Aragorn does, Frodo does, Sam does. Some of the world have forgotten. These guys recognize that if they're going to work in this world, they have to work within their sphere. And then there's higher powers over them which work within their sphere. So what I do in this introduction is I kind of show how we should see the world in its fullness, not just in a material sense. One of the big problems we have in the church is people don't really think of that wider cosmology. When they think of the existence in which we live in, they think of Earth, Moon, Sun, planets, solar system. Now that exists, obviously, but I go beyond that and show that there's different levels of existence and how they all interact. And we need to be acutely aware of how they interact if we want to live wisely in this world. And that's something the scriptures does. The scriptures present us a very detailed cosmology of what the world looks like. And I just introduce people to that in the introduction.